Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Making Cost and Attribute in Electric Vehicle Development. I'm Lisa Arriga with SAE Media Group, your moderator for this 30-minute program, which is being sponsored by aPriori. Our speaker is Chris Glover, a cost and estimating expert with a background in automotive vehicle design and development. Chris is the cost engineering lead for Arrival, a disruptive vehicle manufacturer with plans to develop electric vehicles that are competitive in price with traditional internal combustion-based designs. In today's webinar, he'll explain how Arrival leverages aPriori's automated cloud-based technology to optimize the vehicle development process. After his presentation, we'll have a Q&A. And now, please join me in welcoming our speaker, Chris Glover.
Thanks, Lisa. Hi all. Let me tell you a bit about Arrival. As a newcomer to the automotive sector, our mission is to disrupt the market by using efficient and novel approaches. We intend to rapidly reduce the cost of electric vehicles to a price that's comparable to ICE vehicles. Now, it's really important to us that our products provide features that are expected by our customers. And we don't complete our price mission by providing a subpar offering that, although is price comparable, doesn't offer the experience that our customers demand. Our goal really is to provide a tailored vehicle that uses innovative technologies. So, for example, we've chosen to use our own composite materials that are strong, tough, and about 50% the weight of steel to replace some traditional body structures. But also, this lends itself to our microfactory concept, which effectively allows us to roll into a town, set up a facility without using excessive amounts of capital investment, and provide products that the local community wants. Of course, this comes with its own challenges. We need to now source parts using multiple local supply bases. As you can imagine, this poses a massive test to us in cost engineering. We have a small team, a giant scope, and now we need to be able to predict the price of multiple components using a variety of regional bases. On top of all that, it's critical that we can give the right cost insight at the right time in order to make the right commercial decision. So during the initial creation of cost engineering, the first thing we needed to do was establish a method of organizing and creating estimates using a single source of the truth. In my experience, it's a lot easier to introduce ways of working early in the process instead of trying to drive change later on. In our case, we decided to partner with aPriori as a system to create our estimates. We chose them because they offered us a route to automation, so from taking CAD and creating a cost estimate using that CAD. This was a really key step for me. This is because I'm never going to have the biggest team in the industry to deliver cost engineering insights. However, when you take a vehicle, the amount of work that goes into it doesn't change, regardless of the size of the team that you have. So to get the coverage required, we need to look at another way in order to allow us to reach further into the business than we would normally do with a larger team. As a result, this automated section was really important to us. Another key factor with aPriori is the fact that it gives us a way to customize our digital thread to represent our supply base and manufacturing region. Again, this is super important to us, given the potential footprint and multiple factories that we'll have across the world. aPriori also offers us a way to help guarantee we meet our DFM and design for cost targets prior to engineering release and supplier engagement. So next up, we had to define our challenge. I'm not sure it would be a surprise to anyone here if I said that the challenge faced by Arrival is similar to the cost challenges faced elsewhere in industry. At the end of the day, we're still building an automotive product, and the decisions made upfront in the conception phase quintessentially are responsible for the cost at the end of the project. I'll just draw your attention to the date in the bottom of the picture on the left-hand side. You can see that this conversation has been going on for quite a while, and yet we still don't have a solution to the question, why don't we just measure costs like any other attribute? Speaking candidly, it's hard to measure cost actively and provide it in a meaningful way to the business. Estimates require a great deal of skill to make properly. Often we find that cost engineers are time-served production or tooling engineers that bring years of experience. These estimates take time to construct, and there are normally a lot of dynamic inputs that are sometimes difficult to quantify or change often. And unfortunately, due to all of these problems, we tend to find that an estimate for a design hits the design engineers late, and as a result, the information isn't as useful as it could be. So the first one and the most common is they decentralize costs from design engineering. The logic being here that design engineers should design, whilst the cost engineers should cost. So in principle, this is great. However, in action, it tends to lead to a lag forming between a design being created and a cost being generated. This means that all the insights, design to cost and design to manufacture, turn up to the party late. And as a result, designers can continue to design along the wrong path. Worst of all, we tend to find that the designers don't connect to their costs until supplier engagement. Again, this loses any kind of incremental tracking of changes that might be related to any geometries or additional specifications that go into the vehicle. Another step often taken is to implement parametric tools. They serve the purpose, but again, they're normally based on empirical data, and as a result, they rely on what we did last time. This leaves a great knowledge gap when we want to innovate or do something new. Finally, there's a mindset around resource and cost engineering. I've seen two extremes over my time. The first one is companies engage too frequently and throw headcount at the situation, leading to a really burdensome cost assurance process. Or on the other hand, engage at only the gateways, in this case, potentially leaving the project unaware of cost risk associated until it's too late. So at Arrival, what did we decide to do? Firstly, we have a separate cost engineering department. However, our goal is not necessarily to have people visible at every stage of the process. Our goal is to innovate and support the more complex decision-making processes by providing insight to drive commercial decisions. Then, on the other hand, we want to provide training and tools to make sure that cost engineering practices are recognized and applied throughout the business. Whether it's in the purchase or engineering forum, everyone should be able to examine costs and understand them. So how did we do this? Well, by making costs measurable and designing a process that seamlessly generates the required economic data at the right time. At the end of the day, we should just be able to generate a directional cost with a click of a button. For me, there are three overlapping principles that are key for this to work. Firstly, we empower individuals to make their own estimates. Secondly, we inform our cost models with specialist knowledge, but share that process with everyone, so best practice becomes king. And finally, we automate as much data collection as possible in order to gain a comprehensive insight of our product. I'm going to focus on two of the steps that I believe are most critical to you guys today: empowering people and automation. So step one was to give design engineers the right tools to estimate as they go. We chose aPriori's Cost Insight Design as a simple but effective CAD to cost tool. Essentially, engineers can now load a component directly into a system, set some basic parameters, and then after a minute or so, have both the manufacturability report and cost tailored to their design. The kind of data we now have available includes directional piece costs and tooling costs, but also useful insights that can be used to drive efficiency within the design. For example, for stamped parts, we can get the stamped part utilization and nesting metrics directly from the system. We can also track the maturation of parts to see how the cost has changed during the design phase. Again, very useful in order to task and drive change within the design engineering function. By making this available to everyone, critically, we remove the need for suppliers to provide initial cost and manufacturability feedback early in the process. It also puts the onus back on engineering to design to cost first time. This leads to shorter design cycles, as iteration can be removed from the process through upfront evaluation. Secondly, we introduced an automated pipeline to link PLM directly to aPriori. We deliberately did this to simplify the data collection process. So just in case an engineer forgets to run an evaluation, we automatically have a feedback loop that does that now. Essentially, aPriori now has access to the CAD. It can pick it itself, estimate the cost, and provide a report directly to the engineer's inbox. They can then take that report and feed the insights back into their design. By using this method, we can now start generating some big data sets that will identify where our problem parts are and where we should focus first. Great. This is great because it's freed up our cost engineering department to focus on more complex tasks and allow design engineers to see how they're affecting the design early enough to change it before it's too late. An example we can talk about. Recently, we completed an exercise on 40 body structure parts, ranging in technology and surface finish. So this included things like stampings, injection molding, extrusions, and castings, all in one pack. Typically, this kind of package would take a week or so to cost. This is without any kind of evaluation in regards to manufacturability, which would normally take another week or so on top. With aPriori, we were able to do this in a matter of hours, and as the DFM information is already created as we go, overall we saved about 2 or 3 weeks, which when you're a small team is vital. It also provided information directly to the engineers for them to immediately start affecting their design in order to implement the changes and remarks and insights that we pulled out from the analysis. So overall, that's our approach. We simplify the costing process, make it seamless, and share it with everyone. This way, we can start treating and measuring costs like any other attribute. Design engineers become proactive influencers. Costs become an important part of the process and not just an afterthought. Cost quality is generally improved, and the design for cost, design for manufacture loop is reduced significantly. Thank you for listening. Now back to you, Lisa.
Thanks, Chris. That was a great presentation. It's time now to look at the questions from our webinar audience. Joining us for the Q&A will be Dave McDermott, Director of Business Consulting with aPriori. Any questions that we don't address during this Q&A will be answered by email after the webinar. And our first question goes to Chris. Chris, what is the most challenging part of your Making Cost an Attribute project?
One of the biggest challenges that we've had implementing this is probably building traction within the business. A lot of the work that we do falls outside of the cost engineering department as a whole. And as a result, we're trying to influence people that don't directly work for me or have any kind of relation to me on a day-to-day basis. As a result, we spent a lot of time looking at senior buy-in, so working with the engineering directors and managers in order to demonstrate the benefits of coming along on the journey with us. Once we'd established that level of traction, we also focused heavily on user engagement. So we have chat groups set up where we share problems, techniques, and learnings as we go. But also, more formally, we make sure that we have a drop-in session with aPriori. So if we have any tricky points that we can't solve within the immediate company, we can always refer to an expert service member of staff at aPriori. They can normally help us with the problem. And that way, the whole goal here is to make the system as user-friendly as possible in order to encourage people to engage.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. And our next question is for Dave. So I want to welcome Dave to our webinar. And Dave, you have a two-part question. First is, does this rely on a fully defined part definition in PLM? And how does it know the production strategy? Dave?
Hi, Lisa. There's a technical part of this question. Obviously, it's why it's being asked. How technically does it do it? But in reality, the definition of the product in PLM will evolve over time as companies define their products. So early maturity information can still be used and you can still get insight, but as that matures, the level of accuracy, precision, and insight will become greater and greater. But that said, even companies that don't have a fully defined bills of materials or fully defined production attributes about their production parameters and the process types that are used, it's amazing how business intelligence can be found inside that data. And our solutions read that information and can interpret it to assess things like material grades that are likely to be used based on the part coding or based on attributes in the part and so on. So all that data, and I think the second part of the question was about the manufacturing data, that can be found when it's not available early on. You can still make analyses and assumptions, and as that matures, you just get better and better output as the product life cycle grows. I hope that answers that question.
Oh, I'm sure it did. Thanks, Dave. Chris, this next question is for you. How good are the estimates made using the autonomous costing method? Chris?
Good question. So like all systems, they are subject to the quality of the inputs that go in. So we always use the term rubbish in, rubbish out. So it's important to make sure that when we're using the system, we always choose the right technology group and the right commercial data. What I can say, though, is the autonomous pipeline is directly connected to the system that my cost engineers use on a day-to-day basis. So providing that the inputs are correct, I think it's fair to say that the outputs are definitely fit for purpose, all because we're building this one ecosystem that essentially uses the same cost logic and can always drive an estimate down the same kind of routes. I hope that answers that question.
Yes, I think so. Thanks so much, Chris. Dave, this next question is for you. Can business intelligence tools make use of all the cost data?
Good question. I presume that's been asked because somebody's already spotted the fact that through automation, we get large amounts of information, almost to the standard of big data if you're really growing your organization. And absolutely, so technically, yes, it does integrate with business intelligence. It even has its own business intelligence tool. But whatever solution you use for business intelligence, you can start to explore what comes out of that to look for opportunities for cost reduction or cost avoidance or solving problems in production way before you get to them. It can find these opportunities among big pieces of information. And if anyone's been onto one of the webinars I've been on, then I always talk about the fact that we look for the opportunities for cost reduction, but you can also look for the opportunities of where we've been avoiding money, where we've been doing a really good job, and doing more of that and plugging that into the standards. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Chris, someone in the audience wants to know, how long did it take to calibrate the cost models to yield a supplier representative price? Chris?
Sure. Again, a really, really good question. I think it's fair to say that out of the box, honestly, some of the data that aPriori already provides is very, very usable, and essentially is able to already start the debate with the engineers. So we already use the out-of-the-box material prices, labor rate, and machine rate in order to drive some directional estimates. The issue you have is, of course, every supplier is different, and it takes time to work with the suppliers to create the details. But it's possible to do quite quickly, providing that you have an open book approach with your suppliers and you understand the methodology in which they're quoting with. Honestly, within a few months, you can get to a point where you can really hone in on a supplier's cost base and build accurate models around it. What I would say, though, is the process is constantly iterative. It's not like a case that you can set up everything in one shot and that will be right for the rest of the life. There's definitely a level of maintenance that you have, to be honest, with all estimating systems, to make sure that the materials are market representative, labours are market representative, etc. But providing that there is a structure around whatever estimating system you have, then you can easily and successfully mimic almost digital twins of your supply base within a few months.
Very good. Thanks, Chris. Dave, this question is for you. Again, an audience member wants to know what design tools and formats are supported to be able to feed the cost analytics.
Okay, there are two levels to that. There is the actual design data and the information in production too. That we support all the major CAD tools for that, including neutral file formats like JT and STEP. So any CAD data can be read to do this. To automate it, we, out of the box, today support Teamcenter and Windchill, but we're developing hooks that go into the likes of Innovia and other PLM systems. But for our customers who don't have a regular PLM system, like homegrown ones, we also have a way of integrating with a standard file folder system and a set of data that can be formatted in something as simple as CSV or Excel. And to summarize that, we have a way of hooking into pretty much everything that's out there, either through a formal integration or through a very pragmatic but powerful integration.
Thanks, Dave. I'd like to take a moment and ask, both our speakers about today's presentation, about our webinar. Maybe if you could mention just one key thought that you hope our audience takes away with them today. Let's start with Chris. I'll ask Chris first, and then Dave, you'll be thinking about what you want to say. Chris, what do you think? What is a key takeaway that you hope the audience maintains?
Yeah, so the biggest takeaway here from my side is cost is for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're a design engineer, a cost engineer, a buyer, or a manager. You should all understand the cost base and the context in which we're working. It's very easy to separate your day-to-day job from the fact that there are overriding business principles. And people should be really aware that when they design a part, make a change, or interact with any part of a product, they can affect the cost, either positively or negatively. And making sure that you understand that what you do has that level of effect is critical from my side. And just spread that message as wide as you can, that like cost is king at the end of the day. One of the biggest issues you have is you can have the best product on the market, but if it's too expensive and no one will buy it, you don't have a business. And if you don't have a business, you can't make the product that we all love and enjoy.
Excellent insight. Thank you, Chris. Dave, before we get back to questions from the audience, what is your hope for a key takeaway for the audience?
Well, there's probably many, but I think echoing a little bit of what Chris is saying as well in the light of this presentation, we found our most successful clients treat cost as a team sport. This is not a solution to hand to some people solely to do a job. The more the organization buys into using this in design, procurement, manufacturing operations, supplier, strategic sourcing, whatever, the more power there is that they can bring from this. And our customers vary from industry to industry, but they all are trying to achieve the same thing. So if you have people in the company from the CFO down who care about cost and time to market and are actually measured on it, and those people want to do something about it, then there's probably many arms to the business that can do it. But back to the point of this presentation, it only really works if this is a team sport, if we're all engaged in making this something that we really want to have an impact on our business.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Now, getting back to an audience question, this is for you, Dave. What is the accuracy in cost attributes when calibrated with supplier quotations?
Okay. The accuracy can be 100%. And then Chris sort of mentioned this a little bit earlier on. It's if you put good information, you get good stuff out. And the only way I can really express this is by looking at an example, like Alstom, for example. And it's not just Alstom that do this, but they're the ones that we're allowed to talk about because they've talked about this publicly. They have key suppliers who in France, it's good business if they work with the French suppliers and quickly get into production for the things that they need for Alstom's production, because they're competing against the Bombardiers of the world until they went and acquired Bombardier. So their whole business is about, we got to work together as an enterprise. So they have calibrated cost models that are so precise that when they go to their suppliers, the number that comes out of this is the number that the supplier is going to charge them. Is that accurate? And they avoid the negotiation and cost understanding process. That's already taken care of by aPriori. So you can tailor this to be a very precise, very speedy estimation of cost.
Wonderful. I think that's a great note to end on. I want to thank both our speakers for today's presentation and this Q&A. I want to thank Chris Glover and Dave McDermott for joining us. I also want to thank our audience for being with us today. Thanks very much for watching. Thank you.